The President. Questions. Question 1. Dr. Simon Lee. Thank you, President. Many people have pointed out that given the shortage of parking spaces, some businesses are occupying on-street parking spaces in various districts on a long-term basis or blocking them with objects in order to use such parking spaces for commercial activities. There are views that such practices defeat the original purpose of installing parking meters to prevent the prolonged parking and occupation of road space by vehicles, violate the principle of fair use of public resources, and bring inconvenience to motorists. In this connection, will the government inform this Council: 1. Of the measures taken by the government in the past 3 years to combat the illegal long-term occupation of on-street parking spaces and the enforcement situation. 2. As there are views that the long-term occupation of on-street parking spaces or their blockage with objects by businesses has existed in various districts for many years, what specific measures the government has in place to step up efforts in combating such practices? And 3. As it is learned that at present some mainland cities have implemented license plate recognition systems by installing sensors to identify vehicles in parking spaces to assist with enforcement, whether the authorities will consider introducing similar systems or other innovative technological devices at on-street parking spaces to assist law enforcement agencies in combating the illegal occupation of on-street parking spaces, including long-term occupation, blockage with objects, and holding of commercial activities. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, the government's policy is centered on public transport. We encourage the public to make good use of the public transport services as far as possible. This is to avoid aggravating the burden on road traffic resulting from excessive private cars. In response to the parking demand from both private cars and commercial vehicles, over the past years, the government has been actively pursuing a host of short-term and medium to long-term measures to increase the supply of parking spaces where circumstances permit. Over the past 3 years, the number of metered parking spaces, or metered spaces, has increased by more than 2,300. Having consulted the Transport Department and the Hong Kong Police Force, we give our consolidated reply to the question raised by Dr. Lee as follows. 1 and 2. The government has all along been combating the illegal occupation of metered spaces, deterring fare evasion and other forms of illegal use to enhance turnover and ensure these spaces meet short-term parking needs. The Hong Kong Police Force conducts inspections and takes enforcement actions against unpaid parking and maintains close coordination with relevant departments such as the Transport Department at the district level for ongoing monitoring. Since 2021, the new generation parking meter system equipped with sensors can detect occupancy in real time. This enables the TD to identify unpaid metered spaces through its back-end computer system. The TD shares this information with the Hong Kong Police Force via a dedicated application to facilitate enforcement. In terms of actual enforcement, the meter operator engaged by the TD provides information of unpaid but occupied metered spaces detected by the meter sensors to the HKPF for follow-up and dispatches personnel to patrol parking meters regularly in various districts. If any unlawful occupation of metered spaces is observed, the contractor will report the situation to relevant departments, for example, the HKPF, the Lands Department, and the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department for enforcement. Currently, the contractor conducts daily inspections and refers an average of about 120,000 cases per year to the HKPF for non-payment of parking fees, while the number of referrals about parking spaces occupied by non-vehicle items to the HKPF and other relevant departments has doubled over the past 3 years to over 200 cases. The TD also refers public complaints to the appropriate authorities for action. Moreover, the HKPF continues its publicity efforts and education efforts. Between 2021 and 2024, the number of metered parking spaces increased by over 10%, while revenue from metered parking fees rose by more than 40%. That shows improvement in the situation of non-payment for parking. On enforcement against other forms of illegal occupation, Section 4A of the Summary Offences Ordinance stipulates that anyone who leaves objects in a public place, such as pallets, shop goods to reserved places, causing obstruction, inconvenience, or danger to others or vehicles without reasonable excuse, is liable to a level 4 fine. That's $25,000, or 3 months imprisonment. 3. As I said before, the new generation parking meter system is equipped with sensors to detect the usage status of parking spaces in real time. The purpose of collecting information is to provide motorists with locations of vacant on-street parking spaces in real time, and does not have the function of identifying license plate numbers. Still, this information can help the HKPF and the TD in identifying cases where metered spaces are occupied without payment. That enables the HKPF to take targeted enforcement actions. The departments will continue to draw on the experience of other places and advancements in relevant technologies as they actively explore the adoption of new technologies to enhance the management and operational efficiency of metered spaces. The TD has plans to conduct a 2-month pilot scheme in the 4th quarter this year, adopting artificial intelligence sensors in targeted areas with greater demand for metered spaces and higher rates of illegal occupation of parking spaces. On the license plate recognition systems, the TD keeps an open mind. It will look at the reliability of such a system, alongside with the cost-effectiveness of upgrading the meter system's hardware and software holistically to determine their suitability for use in Hong Kong. Thank you, President. Dr. Simon LEE. Thank you, President. I prepared for my question. My team and I looked at To Kwa Wan. We looked at a few black spots in that district. So we observed the situation for 3 months. Now, for illegal occupation and long-term blocking of metered parking spaces, the people who do that are repeat offenders, and they do it in a cyclical fashion. So in terms of enforcement and penalties, will there be targeted measures for these repeat offenders? Secretary. I thank Dr. Lee for his supplementary question. He raised a good question. As I said in my main reply, we take a multi-pronged approach. So we have this meter operator. They patrol the meters every day. We gather data based on the sensors. The figures show there are some black spots where the problem is particularly serious. And the occupation happens more often. So we step up patrols, and we also work with the police on operations. Now, sometimes the metered parking space is occupied by other objects or a dump truck. People use the parking spaces for other purposes. For those cases, we follow up with the relevant departments. Dr. Lee mentioned penalties. He wondered whether we can toughen the penalties to achieve a greater deterrent effect, such that we can do something about the repeat offenders. So we keep an open mind about this idea. We will make greater use of technology. We will use AI-based technologies and sensors. We believe that will help us with enforcement monitoring, and we can achieve greater efficiency in such work. Dr. Junius Ho. I welcome the remark from the Secretary about using AI and advanced technology. A few universities in Hong Kong are leading the charge with technology. So we should go beyond just using octopus payment for the meters. We now even have online payment for parking meters. So can we restrict people's use of meters to, say, 30 minutes? That can help prevent long-term occupation of these spaces. Now, I just heard about sensors taking pictures of license plates. So can we have a fully automated monitoring system? That shouldn't be too hard to achieve. You can get universities to help you. Can we explore this concept? Do we have a timetable on how we can achieve that? Secretary. I thank Dr. Ho for his question and suggestion. We want smart meters. That's our goal. For the new meters, we adopt not just sensors, we will also adopt AI-based solutions. So there will be a learning process for the system. We will make greater use of technology in the meters. We also allow remote payments for people to extend their parking slots. That's already possible. The TD, or Transport Department, already has the HKE meter app. So people can pay their parking fees on the spot. They may leave for a meal, and then people can pay the parking fees remotely with the app. We have universities and research institutes in Hong Kong, and we can certainly strengthen cooperation with them so that we can achieve synergy in terms of payment, monitoring, surveillance, and even surveillance and enforcement. That way we can achieve greater success in our work, and we keep an open mind about that. Dr. Ben Chen. Thank you, President. There are loopholes in our legislation on parking spaces. There is no restriction on the same car staying in the same parking space. The driver can keep paying the parking fees and the car can stay. The driver can hawk the space for 24 hours and there's nothing we can do. So some people just hawk the space. They use the space for other purposes. The law does not prevent people from hawking the space and using it for other purposes. Of course, we have laws on hawking. And then there is no law preventing people from hawking the parking space for a recycling business. And that's what trucks are doing with the spaces. When people take payment, and those people take payment, we don't treat that as selling things. So even our laws on hawking do not apply to such activities. So given the loopholes we have seen, will there be a legislative amendment to the laws on parking? Secretary. I thank Dr. Chen for his question. Such situations do happen in different districts. I do not write that off. But we're talking about possibly isolated cases. And then there may be people who really need to park their cars in a spot for a long time. So we have to be careful. This will require careful balancing because there are motorists who may need to park their car in a spot for a long time. This happens in some districts. Our practice is to encourage the turnover of parking spaces. We just introduced a piece of subsidiary legislation into LegCo about adjusting the parking fees. That's to do something about the cost of parking to encourage turnover of such parking spaces. We have to strike a balance. We want to make sure people do use the parking spaces for parking instead of other commercial purposes. So for that purpose, monitoring technologies can help. We can also talk to different departments about carving out different zones for different purposes, and we will have to proceed with care on that. Dr. Elizabeth Kwok. Now we have dire shortage of parking spaces and meters. And there are people who do need to park their cars on a short-term basis. Say people have to load and unload their goods. People have to buy emergency things for emergency purposes. And commercial vehicle drivers need to go to a toilet and they have to park their car there. But when they cannot secure a parking area, they get a ticket. Now, and for both those breaching the parking laws, they pay simply $400. In Europe and the US, there are loading zones. You can use the zone for 15 minutes free of charge. If you breach the law, they get a progressive fine and the car may be towed away. So we would consider setting time-limited loading zones, and can we use technology to assist with enforcement? Secretary. On designating parking areas and loading unloading zones or drop off and pick up points, we have to make good use of the road space. In commercial areas such as Central, Sheung-wan, or busier districts such as the Causeway Bay, Mong Kok, Kowloon City, commercial vehicles such as goods vehicles do have to load and unload goods. We try to provide more parking spaces. We also work with the transport department and the police force about providing more loading and unloading areas. Ms. Elizabeth Kwok just brought up the experience overseas. Apart from better planning and zoning, we also have to find a way to achieve our goal through enforcement. So I hope our legislation on adjusting the parking fees can be passed so that we can raise the fees without affecting business operations, while also we can encourage turnover and then stop people from occupying those parking spaces time and again. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Members have discussed the use of technology in enforcement, but I want to turn to something else. Can we make greater use of existing technology? HAE toll is user-friendly. It offers free-flow tolling, or people can choose to pay a sum and that will cover their fees after a while. Can we find easier ways of people to pay their parking fees? And then we can reduce the need for enforcement. The new generation of parking meters were rolled out in 2021. Back then, HAE toll wasn't in place yet. We did our research on the latest software and monitoring technologies back then. So the meters were brought in 2021 were already better than the older ones. Now we have HAE toll. We also have a mobile app for drivers to pay their tolls. From time to time, we review the systems we use. We seek improvement so that we keep up with the times with our parking meters and other systems. Ms. Lillian Kwok. Now, for parking metered parking spaces, there are school buses, and those school buses can only stop at certain bus stops or minibuses. But such school buses cannot use the metered parking spaces. Even when the driver pays the parking fee, these school buses get a ticket. And that means when the driver of a commercial vehicle wants to stop the car to pick up a lunchbox or anything, they get a ticket. So can we relax our laws such that we allow school buses to use metered parking spaces on a short-term basis? There are more than 10,000 such buses. So the demand is huge. We don't have designated zones for these school buses. So can we give these school buses options? Secretary. I thank Ms. Kwok for her question. We have had discussions about school buses and parking spaces for them. around schools and near housing estates. There are areas for school buses for parking. We will look for ways to make it easier for those drivers to park the school buses and make it easier for people to pick up and drop off students. But on-street spaces are limited. We can certainly work with schools and the transport department about a phased approach to make that happen. Mr. Robert Lee. There are people who occupy metered parking spaces for a long time. We cannot identify those people, and that's what's holding back enforcement. So will the government consider installing closed-circuit television cameras to assist with enforcement? I thank Mr. Robert Lee for the question. In mainland cities like Beijing and Shanghai, parking meters come with cameras to identify license plate. Our meters in Hong Kong cannot identify license plates. If we want to install them, we have to explore the cost effectiveness. Other cities take a different approach. This year, we will launch a pilot scheme. There will be an AI-based system of sensors. For some black spots, we will work with the relevant departments and the police about using such cameras from a height.
Mr. CHU Kwok-keung, the government is now establishing the Study in Hong Kong brand to develop Hong Kong International Hub for Education. There are views pointing out that the robust development of local basic education and the extensive recognition of the Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education Examination, Hong Kong DSE qualification, primary and secondary schools are well positioned to admit non-local students amid the continuing decline in the number of students. At present, however, entry for non-local students to study in Hong Kong's public or aided primary and secondary schools, other than English Schools Foundation, ESF schools, and direct subsidy scheme, DSS schools, is not permitted. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, of the respective numbers of minor students coming to Hong Kong on student visas to study in private primary and secondary schools, ESF schools, and DSS primary and secondary schools over the past 3 school years, as well as the distribution of their years of study? 2, whether it will consider drawing on the practices of other countries to relax the eligibility criteria for student visas so as to allow non-local minor students entry into Hong Kong to study in public or aided primary and secondary schools, as well as introducing student guardian visas for their parents to stay in Hong Kong and engage in time-limited employment. And 3, whether it will consider encouraging private enterprises or educational institutions to establish additional student hostels or overseas student apartments to provide accommodation and ancillary services suitable for students of different ages, as well as establishing corresponding licensing and registration regimes. Secretary for Education. President, the Chief Executive announced in the 2024 policy address that the government would promote the development of an international hub for post-secondary education by establishing the Study in Hong Kong brand, as well as pooling together and nurturing high-caliber global talents. The policy is built on the foundation that Hong Kong has world-renowned universities, with 5 of them ranking among the world's top 100 and 6 within Asia's top 50, and also many of our universities have achieved high ranking on the list of the most international universities in the world. Our post-secondary education is highly internationalized and diversified, and we boast outstanding research talents. Meanwhile, the National 14th Five-Year Plan supports Hong Kong as the development centers in the 8 key areas, 8 centers in short. The Education Bureau, EDB, has been proactively encouraging post-secondary education institutions to develop more related applied degree programs to complement with the talent backing for the 8 centers. At the same time, priority is given to the development of an international hub for post-secondary education, attracting outstanding academics and students from all over the world to Hong Kong to enrich the local talent pools. Regarding our basic education, Hong Kong as an international city enjoys strong support of the motherland and being closely related to the world. While we have been providing 12-year free and quality primary and secondary education to all local children through public sector schools, parents of non-local students are offered with diversified choices so that their children can study in non-public sector schools, including international schools, private schools, and direct subsidy schools on a self-financing basis. These arrangements aim to ensure a reasonable balance between the supply and demand of school places and basic education in the relevant arrangements while achieving prudent use of public funds. In fact, Hong Kong's diversified and quality school education has long been rated as world's excellent system in international education comparative studies. Having consulted the Security Bureau and the Immigration Department, I'll reply to the question raised by Mr. CHU Kwok-keung as follows. 1. In the past 3 years, 2022 to 2024, a total of 1,686 applications for student visa or entry permit were approved by the Immigration Department for non-local children aged below 17 coming to Hong Kong for education. The Immigration Department and the Education Bureau do not keep statistics on the types of schools admitting these students. 2. The government is committed to developing a vibrant international school sector to meet the demand for international school places from non-local families living in Hong Kong, as well as families coming to Hong Kong for work or investment. International schools belong to the private school sector, operating on a self-financing and market-driven basis. They are not subsidized by public fund for daily operation. Besides, non-local public sector schools have been enjoying the flexibility, including the medium of instruction, curriculum arrangements, public examinations, etc., and providing diversified choices for local parents while offering school places to non-local children who pay school fees at their own expense under the users pay principle. As seen from the figures provided by the Immigration Department over the past few years, there have been a certain number of non-local children aged from 5 years, 8 months to 17 years being approved by or with student study visa and entry permit to come to Hong Kong for education annually. We'll continue to keep in view the demand for school places from non-local children, conduct dynamic assessment of the demand and supply, create conditions in a timely manner, and launch policy measures in response to the situation. For example, supporting the development of non-profit-making private schools, offering non-local curriculum through the school allocation exercise. Besides, we will proactively explore ways to facilitate non-local students to come to Hong Kong to study in a non-public sector schools on a self-financing basis. With regard to public sector school, the policy objective is to provide 12-year quality and free primary and secondary education to eligible children to meet the educational needs of local children. The medium of instruction, curriculum arrangements, public examination, that is the Hong Kong DSE, etc., in public sector schools are based on the learning needs of local children. Education is the foundation for a long-term and sustainable development of a city or country. The government has always attached great importance to education, devoting substantial resources to public sector schools and providing quality education to students over the years, meeting the different learning needs of students in an all-round way, including catering for the learning diversity for students with special educational needs and non-Chinese speaking students with provision of additional learning support and complementary measures. In short, public sector schools are publicly funded at full cost, offer local curriculum, and serve local children. It ensures the prudent use of public funds and fair allocation of educational resources. As such, the parallel development of the public sector schools and non-public sector schools not only caters for the learning needs of the children of different stakeholders, but also achieves the purpose of prudent use of public funds and appropriate allocation of resources. The policy meets Hong Kong's actual circumstances. 3. In general, the boarding services provided by different types of schools are mainly aimed at enriching local students' learning experiences and to cater for the residential needs of a small number of non-local students. At present, there are a total of 16 publicly funded and private ordinary primary and secondary schools across the territories, providing boarding services offering about 3,500 boarding spaces together. If individual schools with need and the premises, space, and manpower allowed, they can submit applications to the EDB to provide boarding facilities on a self-financing basis. We will consider the applications based on the actual needs. The facilities and management of boarding schools should comply with the relevant stipulations such as the Education Regulations, Cap 279A. The accommodation arrangements outside schools should also comply with all relevant laws and requirements. The EDB will closely monitor the residential needs of non-local students, including the boarding facilities provided by different types of schools, and maintain communication with the education sector and relevant government departments to review the related arrangements in a timely manner. President, education is the key to a 100-year plan. While being open to different views, the EDB will carefully consider each and every policy initiative to maintain the strengths of Hong Kong education, orderly promote the development of an international hub for post-secondary education, and strengthen the high-quality development of education in Hong Kong. Thank you, President. Mr. CHU Kwok-keung. Thank you, President. It seems that the secretaries ruled out the possibility of allowing non-local students to enroll in public sector schools. Under the current policy, non-local students have to pay a tuition to enter DDS direct subsidy school. It cost about $140,000 a year. On the mainland, there are schools offering DSE programs, but the quality varies. What is the reason why we don't make better use of our brand to bring in more revenue? Secretary. Mr. Chu is of the view that as long as we ask the non-local students to pay a tuition when they enroll in public sector school, then it's fine. Well, apart from the tuition issue, we have to look at the medium of instruction offered in the public sector schools, which is Cantonese. We only offer Hong Kong DSE programs, also in local public sector schools. The curriculum arrangements caters to the needs of local children. We have to be prudent in the use of public resources, and we have to abide by our policy objectives, which is to provide 12-year quality and free primary and secondary education to local children. So we don't think that the proposal of Mr. Chu is feasible. Mr. Gary Chang. Thank you. We don't have enough support for non-Chinese speaking students in Hong Kong. If we want to encourage non-Chinese speaking students enroll in public sector schools or aided primary and secondary schools, what measures do the government have to support the learning needs of these students, to meet their needs and to cater to the needs of also non-local students so that they can adapt to Hong Kong better? Secretary. Non-Chinese speaking students are considered local students. The only difference between them and the local Chinese students is the difficulties that they may face when they are learning courses taught in Cantonese. That's why we have to provide additional learning support for them. The government have been developing a framework of using Chinese language as a second language at schools, admitting non-Chinese speaking students. Regarding non-local students coming from other countries in the world, their native language may not be Chinese and they may not opt to stay in Hong Kong long term or pursue further studies here. Mr. Chang asked we will expand the coverage of our policy. Well, in public sector school, we caters to the diversified learning needs of different local students in our public sector schools. For students coming to Hong Kong on study visa, We encourage them to enroll in private international schools or direct subsidy scheme schools because they offer different types of curriculum, examinations, and medium of instruction. Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, President. Now, speaking of Hong Kong DSE, well, non-local students also have demand for that. But I think that the most important thing is to align the eligibility of non-local students enrolling in international schools, private schools, and direct subsidy scheme schools. I've talked to the Immigration Department. Non-local students holding foreign passports can enroll in international schools, private schools, and DDS schools. But for non-local students who hold mainland visas, whose parents don't enter Hong Kong under the Top Talent Pass scheme, there's no way for them to enroll in local schools, even if they are non-public sector schools. I think that we should align the enrollment standards for non-local students coming from other countries or from the mainland. Secretary. Not all non-local students enrolling in international schools and DDS school come to Hong Kong on study visa. Some of their parents may come to Hong Kong on short-term basis for investment or work. So these students are considered non-local students. Some of them may hold study visa to come. There are a few hundreds of them. They are also called non-local students. Mr. Tang Fei asked if we will consider non-local students coming from foreign countries and mainland as two different types of students. Well, actually, we don't have a study visa arrangements for students coming from Macau, Taiwan, and mainland. Mrs. Regina Ip. Thank you. I understand the policy behind not granting study visas for children aged below 18 coming from the mainland. During the blackout violence in 2019, there were mainland students who came to Hong Kong and they learned from bad examples. Now, regarding the point about student hostels, well, the school that I went to offered boarding service. The students that my school enrolled were very diversified, and they actually achieved the DEI goal. If a private schools only offer boarding service outside schools, then that's perhaps not suitable and not conducive to the development of quality education. Secretary. As I mentioned, we have 16 publicly funded and private ordinary primary and secondary school across the territory offering boarding service. The boarding service is to enrich people's learning experience and cater to the residential needs of a small number of non-local students. Harrow International School offer boarding service to their students. They offer 500 places. The occupancy rate is about 60%. So it seems that the supply is enough. What we are short of is boarding places for university students. After we have raised the quota for non-local students, we need to increase the supply of boarding places for universities. That's why we have been relaxing restrictions. We have been working with the Planning Department and the Development Bureau to look into how we can amend the ordinances so that hotels can convert their rooms into student hostels. Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, President. on the point about boarding service. The reason why we used to offer such service in primary and secondary schools is because there was such a need. However, the demand for boarding service among students aged below 18 may be large. For non-local students or some local students, their parents may not be in Hong Kong all the time. The wardens at the boarding schools may not be guardian or legal guardians of their students. We don't currently have a guardianship system. Who should sign off the forms if the students need to go to the hospital or need to go to the police stations? So I think that we should keep up with the time and establish a guardianship system. I wonder if the administration will talk to the Department of Justice to establish such a system. Secretary. As I mentioned, we will look into the demand of non-local students for boarding services. If we are to increase the supply, we have to look into the facilities such as the manpower and infrastructure. Currently, primary and secondary schools across the territory offer 3,500 boarding places altogether. Whether if a school is an international one, private, or DDS one, they may apply to the EDB to provide boarding services on a self-financing basis. We will consider the applications based on the actual needs. Reverend Peter Kun, thank you. To develop Hong Kong into an international post-secondary education hub, what matters is the programs that we offer. Apart from local curriculum, we also offer IB program in DDS schools and some international schools. However, many parents think that there is not enough quotas. For non-local students, they want to take such IB courses. So will the Education Bureau increase the number of quotas for IB programs? Secretary. Thank you. In public sector school, we offer local curriculum that allow people and students to pursue further studies locally and in other countries. Hong Kong DSE is not only recognized in Hong Kong, but also on the mainland and other countries. As public sector school is funded by public money, so we will only subsidize local curriculum, but not international programs. As to whether there is conditions for us to allow public sector school to offer programs other than Hong Kong DSE, we'll look into whether there is a demand and whether it's technically feasible, as well as the relevant legislations.
Question 3, Ms. Joephy Chan. Thank you, President. Last year, the government optimized the services of the 1823 Contact Center by fully introducing artificial intelligence AI technology to enhance its effectiveness. In this connection, will the government inform this Council 1. of the current respective ratios of application of AI technology in the various service aspects of the 1823 Contact Center, such as case triage, automated responses, and the handling of citizens' voicemail messages and inquiries. 2. Of the respective number and proportion of cases in which the handling was directly completed by the 1823 AI chatbot and those which require referral to staff for handling in the past 12 months. The respective numbers and proportions of citizens who opted for the 1823 self-service options, such as the AI chatbot service, and those who chose to contact hotline staff directly in the past 12 months, whether a survey has been conducted on citizens' overall satisfaction with the 1823 AI chatbot service. And 3. as it is learned that Beijing has deepened its reform of immediate public complaint processing in order to implement the people-centered concept by adopting a precise classification and intelligent assignment mechanism to enhance the overall capacity of the Beijing 12345 citizen hotline for processing public complaints. Whether the government will draw on such experience to further use technologies such as big data to optimize 1823 services and extend their application to non-telephone channels such as email and mobile apps so as to comprehensively enhance service efficiency and address livelihood issues, thereby strengthening citizens' sense of gain, happiness, and security. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Innovation, Technology, and Industry. President, my consolidated reply to the question asked by Ms. Joephy Chan is as follows. Operated by the Digital Policy Office DPO, the 1823 one-stop platform provides 24-hour cross-departmental customer service to help answer public inquiries about the services of 23 government bureaus and departments BDs and receive complaints and service requests for all BDs. In addition to telephone hotline, citizens can now use 1823 services through channels such as mobile app, website, email, and e-forms. In 2024, the total usage volume of 1823 reached 7.55 million, including about 3.3 million calls and written correspondences. In general, upon receipt of public inquiries or complaints from various channels, 1823 will classify them into two broad types for processing. For public inquiries concerning participating BDs, 1823 will answer them directly, whereas for complaints regarding government services, 1823 will refer them to the relevant BDs for follow-up. At present, 1823 has widely adopted AI and other innovative technologies in various service areas to make its work process smarter and more automated. These measures include 1. At the case triage stage, 1823 employs AI speech recognition technology and algorithms to analyze the contents of citizens' incoming calls and written texts or submissions, automatically assigning these cases to staff members familiar with the respective subject matter, thereby enhancing work efficiency. For cases that require referral to other departments, 1823 uses a business rule engine integrated with the Lands Department's Geographic Information Platform to swiftly refer cases to the designated units of relevant departments based on factors such as the case nature, time, and location. 2. For written inquiries handled directly by 1823, we use generative AI technology to assist 1823 staff in drafting responses, thereby enhancing the case processing speed. 3. 1823 adopts AI speech-to-text technology to transcribe voice messages into texts and thus expedite the work process. And 4. Since 2023, 1823 has progressively introduced and enhanced self-service channels, including an AI chatbot, a smart interactive voice response system, and online self-service inquiry service. These channels handle citizens in general or common inquiries in real time, while allowing resources to be focused on more complicated cases. The above measures show that we have integrated AI into the major operational areas of 1823 to enhance the efficiency of case intake, triage, referral, handling, and resolution. The proportion of citizens using the related smart services has also increased. In 2023, the usage volume of 1823 digital self-services was nearly 3.9 million, for the first time surpassing traditional manual services, that is, calls, emails, e-forms, text messages, and so on that require manual processing. The usage volume of self-services continued to go up by 10% to 4.26 million times in 2024, accounting for about 56% of the total. Taking the AI chatbot of 1823 as an example, it now handles over 10,000 inquiries on a monthly basis, which is a twofold increase from 2023 with a resolution rate of over 90%. The effectiveness of technological applications in enhancing 1823 service performance is also reflected in our customer satisfaction survey. On a 5-point scale, the 1823's overall customer satisfaction score in 2024 was 4.60, up from 4.56 in 2023 and 4.52 in 2022. The enhancement of 1823 service will continue. We'll further strengthen the 1823 mechanisms for case classification, triage, and referral, focusing on operational data analysis and case handling process. In addition, we will further expand the use or trial of AI in different service areas and interfaces. For instance, we'll use AI to capture case information from emails for inputting it to the case management system, provide digital self-service for case progress tracking, and enhance the question answering capabilities of the chatbot, etc. to improve operational efficiency and user experience. We will adopt such technologies in the email system in order to enhance operational efficiency. Thank you. Ms. Joephy Chan. I was honored to take part in the Forum of Immediate Public Complaint Processing in Beijing. Then we could target the source of the problem and handle public inquiries and complaints very fast. Resources are focused on handling complicated cases, as the Secretary mentioned. I'd like to know whether we can draw reference from the Beijing system so that we can make good use of big data to categorize common questions asked by the public. Then we can improve the policies before the public asks questions. Then we can achieve modernization by way of e-government or e-governance. Secretary, thank you, President. All along, the 1823 has been working very closely with different BDs of the government to handle public complaints. The 1823 is a convenient avenue to receive public complaints. BDs are responsible for handling these cases and complaints. The 1823 receives public complaints and consolidates the data, which will then be passed on to different BDs. Different reports will be submitted to different BDs for reference and follow-up. Data collected from the 1823 service will be consolidated. Case information will also be consolidated to identify room for improvement in relation to government services. In accordance with the priority of different BDs, we aim to enhance operational efficiency. This line of work is ongoing. I'd like to point out specifically last year, in relation to district governance work and the 1823 service, in 2024, 1823 complaint handling mechanism was enhanced. We have made enhancements to the handling of public complaints, and we will refer cases to the Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration if need be. The aim is to handle district complaints as soon as possible. Regarding commonly asked questions, we draw reference from the Beijing 12345 Citizen Hotline to focus on selected topics as well as livelihood issues. We focus on these areas to enhance district governance. We should draw reference from these experience. I believe we'll continue with such enhancement work. We're willing to continue with our dialogue with the Legislative Council. Thank you. Professor William Wong. Thank you, President. Many members of the public make use of the AI23 mobile app to inquire about government services. I'd like to ask the government, does it have any plan to use Hong Kong Guide V1, which is developed by Hong Kong, to enhance the 1823 mobile application so that 1823 will be able to better help the public to gain information that they seek from the government? Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, President. In future, the government will use different avenues to provide information of use to the public. 1823 is one of the channels, but it won't be the only one. As we just now mentioned, Hong Kong Guide is another channel. Very soon, we will publish a system for public use. With this system, or with the latest version, the public can access the system and gain information very fast. Useful information will also be disseminated to the public. Over 5,500 data exchange gateways are in place. More will be available soon. Overall, I believe the public will obtain government information through different channels. Thank you, Mr. Bu Tang. 1823 is indeed a very good service. (1823) helps us to identify BDs that we should turn to when we handle public complaints and inquiries. There's no real name registration system for using 1823, be it a public inquiry or a public complaint. Sometimes members of the public use our name, for example, Mr. Bill Tang's ward office, to make complaints or make public inquiries with the 1823 service. So can we integrate I Am Smart and the 1823 service so that all the public inquiries or public complaints are made to the government using the real name of the members of the public concern? This will prevent people from making public complaints with ulterior motives. Thank you, Secretary. We welcome suggestions from members of the Council as well as the public. We will definitely listen to calls in society. Just now, member mentioned 1823, and this is indeed one of the most effective ways to handle public complaints. It is, however, by no means the only channel. Regarding how we can better improve communication between the government and the public, this is indeed a very meaningful topic. Some public complaints will be some complaints will go through to the 1823 system. We have already made improvements to the complaint mechanism of 1823. Upon receipt of public inquiries or complaints by the 1823, we will immediately refer such cases to the relevant BDs. In general, the BDs responsible for handling such complaints or cases will reply to the member of the public concerned. We have a comprehensive mechanism. In the handling of more complicated cases, we may need to conduct site visits. We may also need to arrange for contractors to undertake works. Therefore, sometimes it may take some time to handle cases. After improvements to the systems, we have clear requirements in relation to time. Some BDs may refuse to receive cases referred by the 1823 service. For instance, if a particular BD refuses to accept cases from the 1823 service, then the head of grade or principal staff members will have to make an application or handle the cases. Then the cases will go to the district officer of the relevant district. If need be, the district officer will refer the relevant case to the working group led by the Chief Secretary for Administration. He will then give clear guidelines and instructions. Within 29 days, we need to solve the relevant inquiries, and this is our pledge. We already have a clear mechanism, and we are still in discussion as to how we can make further improvements. Mr. Chang Hailong, thank you, President. Professor Sun mentioned very clearly the 29-day mechanism. I'd like to talk about the use of AI chatbots by tens of thousands of members of the public. How we can integrate different AI chatbots with I Am Smart. Members of the public don't understand the logic behind these systems. Do you have any plan to put in place real name registration system for public complaints in different systems? Is it possible to improve the interfacing of different systems? What plans does the administration have? Thank you. The new mechanism handled a total of 190,000 inquiries or complaints. Only 114 cases, that is about 0.1%, had to be referred to more than twice. So overall, this mechanism is effective. Mr. Shang mentioned different AI chatbots as well as AI software. It is indeed important to improve the interfacing of different apps, such as Hong Kong Guy. Through the platform of I Am Smart, members of the public may receive more advanced AI services. In the process, we are confident that the government will improve AI services, and we will also continue to improve user experience. Mr. Kwok-keung, as mentioned in the main reply, there were a total of 7.55 million inquiries last year. 56% of the inquiries were handled by AI services. That is about 20,000 per day, whereas the remaining portion was handled by staff members. The Office of the Ombudsman mentioned for particular cross-departmental cases, there's a reporting mechanism. That's why it will take more time. Just now, the Secretary referred to the 29-day mechanism. As for cross-departmental cases, 1823 will help expedite the handling of these cases. Will the administration categorize these cases before handing them to different departments, so that the situation could be improved at source, so that the administration doesn't have to wait until they receive inquiries or complaints? Secretary, thank you, member, for giving us a very good suggestion. We are collecting different governance data and conducting analyses. They are becoming more and more comprehensive. So how can we make good use of the data and information collected so that we can improve the services from a higher level? The relevant departments in mainland China has already started work in this regard. The government is working very hard when it comes to this. In relation to e-government, how can we enhance the capability of the government in relation to district governance? This is exactly the area we'd like to work on in the next stage. We will collate the data in relation to public complaints and inquiries before handing them to different BDs. We also remind different BDs about how they can make improvements or how they can make good use of big data to analyze their work and improve their work. Ms. Eunice Yong, thank you. The Office of the Ombudsman looked into the effectiveness of the 1823 service. Many issues had a direct impact on livelihood in Hong Kong. As the Secretary mentioned, the Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration is leading a working group. 1823 cases will be referred to this working group. Many members of the public use 1823, and 99% of these cases are handled immediately or referred to the relevant BDs. Just over the last weekend, I made a call to the Water Services Department. Over the phone, it took 20 minutes for me to be connected to a staff member. It is indeed good for 1823 to refer cases to different BDs. and members of the public may not be satisfied when it takes a very long time for their cases to be referred to the relevant BDs. On the handling of more complicated cases, the 1823 service has been in operation for 2 decades or so. I believe you must have accumulated a lot of experience. We're using AI, but can 1823 be a one-stop portal so that cases will be handled and solved by the same portal? The aim is that members of the public don't have to wait further. So can we receive cases and solve these cases with 1823? That is, can it be a single portal, one-stop portal? Secretary, thank you for your trust in 1823. Basically, 1823 can handle public inquiries. When it comes to public complaints, however, 1823 doesn't have frontline experience when it comes to AI to handle complaints. Cases will have to be referred to human staff. It takes time to handle public complaints. Just now, Ms. Eunice Young also mentioned the heavy workload of the 1823 service. We only have 9 civil servants, however. We have engaged 900 or so non-civil servants. Most of them are young people in Hong Kong. These have brought about a lot of job opportunities in Hong Kong. In the past 3 years, 1823 has a total of hundreds of non-civil servants. I'm satisfied with the performance, but then there is always room for improvement. I believe 1823 will continue to improve. Thank you.
Question number 4, Professor Priscilla LEUNG. President, the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department has updated the quarantine arrangements for cats and dogs this month. Cats and dogs imported from the mainland that meet the relevant quarantine requirements, including obtaining satisfactory results from testing conducted by recognized laboratories on the mainland and having an animal health certificate issued by mainland official veterinarians, will have their quarantine period significantly reduced from the current 120 days to 30 days upon arrival in Hong Kong. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. Given that imported cats and dogs are currently required to be quarantined at designated quarantine facilities, whether the authorities will consider introducing a flexible mode of quarantine, such as home quarantine for the entire period, or a mixed mode involving quarantine at a facility for the first 15 days and home quarantine for the remaining 15 days, with a view to relieving the financial burden on animal owners and enhancing the efficiency on the use of facilities. 2. As there are views that the number of imported cats and dogs may increase significantly after the quarantine period is reduced, whether the government has assessed if the numbers of quarantine facilities in Hong Kong and recognized laboratories on the mainland are sufficient to cope with the demand, and how the authorities will ensure the quality of the relevant testing. And 3. As there are views that there is a significant price difference between pet dogs and cats on the mainland and in Hong Kong, and that updating the quarantine arrangements may increase the numbers of pet-keeping households in Hong Kong in the long run, whether the government has assessed if there are sufficient veterinary equipment, clinics, and hospitals in Hong Kong. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. President, rabies is a contagious disease that causes a fatality to mammals, including humans, and no specific treatment is available at present. To prevent the introduction of animal disease such as rabies into Hong Kong, the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department (AFCD) regulates the import of live animals through a permit system and controls the import of cats and dogs under the Public Health Animals and Birds Regulations (Cap 139A) and the Rabies Regulation (Cap 421A) to protect public and animal health. Under effective control measures, Hong Kong has long been widely recognized as a rabies-free place by other places, animals of Hong Kong generally face less stringent quarantine requirements when entering other places. On the quarantine arrangements of imported cats and dogs, AFCD classifies places into different groups according to different risks of rabies, with reference to information about the surveillance of animal disease from the World Organization for Animal Health. Group 1 and Group 2 places are respectively rabies-free places, and places where rabies cases are few and under effective control. Since these places are considered of lower risk of rabies, the imported cats and dogs are exempted from quarantine upon fulfilling specified requirements. Places that do not meet the requirements of Group 1 or Group 2, or where their situations cannot be determined, will be included in Group 3. Cats and dogs imported from these places are required to undergo a quarantine of not less than 120 days before December 2024. Since December 2024, the AFCD has divided Group 3 into Group A and B. Quarantine period for cats and dogs of Group 3A is significantly shortened from 120 days to 30 days upon their arrival in Hong Kong, provided that they meet the relevant quarantine requirements, including that the animals must be vaccinated against rabies, conducted a valid rabies neutralizing antibody titration test, had an animal health certificate issued or endorsed by a government vet officer of the place of export. The Macau, SAR, Lithuania and the mainland have been included in Group 3A successively. As regards Group 3B places, since the risk of rabies is high or uncertain, and the incubation period of rabies can be up to several months, the quarantine period for cats and dogs imported from those places is maintained at not less than 120 days. The reply to the question from Professor Priscilla LEUNG is as follows. 1. As mentioned just now, as long as cats and dogs imported from the newly added Group 3A places, including the mainland, meet the quarantine requirements and hold an animal health certificate issued by an official vet from the mainland, the quarantine period upon arrival in Hong Kong will be significantly reduced from 120 days to 30 days. Because of this change, the cost of quarantine facilities that the owners of these cats and dogs have to pay has been greatly reduced to 1/4 of the previous cost. At the same time, the turnover rate of quarantine facilities will increase to 4 times than that of the past, and the waiting time for quarantine facilities will be reduced correspondingly. The effectiveness of usage will be increased as well. As regards quarantine arrangements, the current international practice is to isolate cats and dogs in officially supervised quarantine facilities to ensure that animals will not have direct or indirect contact with other animals during the quarantine period, so as to avoid transmission of animal disease into the community. As the mortality rate of rabies is close to 100%, and animals have the opportunity to come into contact with other people or animals when they are quarantined in private premises, this will bring to them high risk. Hence, from a risk management perspective, home quarantine arrangement is not appropriate. The government will continue to make reference to the latest animal disease situation announced by the World Organization for Animal Health and optimize the arrangements in a timely manner, taking into account factors such as international practices, operational experience, and risk assessment. 2. To facilitate animal owners to bring their pet dogs and cats into Hong Kong, the government has not only optimized the quarantine requirements for them, but also increased the number of facilities. The new quarantine facilities at the Kowloon Animal Management Center under AFCD have been put into service in May this year. The quarantine facilities provided for cats and dogs have increased from 21 and 20 to 34 to 30 respectively. Further, taking into account the shorter period has increased the turnover speed to 4 times that of the past. The handling capacity of AFCD's quarantine facilities could be increased by as much as 6 to 7 times. In addition, AFCD encourages private animal welfare organizations to provide quarantine facilities and is reviewing the application of the Hong Kong Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. It is expected that the facility will be put into service in the middle of this year. The department will also provide information and assistance to animal welfare groups interested in operating these facilities. On the basis of the above improvement measures, it is expected that the facilities will be able to meet the demand. As regards the number and testing quality of recognized mainland laboratories, after discussing with mainland authorities and taking into account the regional distribution and level of recognition, AFCD has recognized 4 mainland laboratories in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Changchun for conducting rabies antibody titrate tests for cats and dogs. All 4 labs are recognized by mainland authorities and the EU, hence the quality of testing is assured. The AFCD will continue to monitor the situation and will discuss with the mainland authorities to adjust the list of approved labs when necessary. 3. The Veterinary Surgeons Board of Hong Kong, VSB, is a statutory body established under the Veterinary Surgeons Registration Ordinance and is responsible for the regulation, registration, and disciplinary control of vet surgeons to ensure a high standard of services in Hong Kong. VSB learns about the overall veterinary services through data gathered in the regulation of the profession. The number of registered vets has been consistently on the rise since 2015, from 823 in 2015 to 1,364 in April this year, an increase of 65%. RVS comprises many specialties such as small animal internal medicine, surgery, dermatology, cardiology, neurology, veterinary pathology, etc. Apart from private veterinary clinics, the City University of Hong Kong and some animal welfare groups such as Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals also provide veterinary services. Therefore, animal owners should be able to find appropriate vet services for their pets. Thank you. Professor Priscilla Leung. President, I thank the Secretary for his reply. I need to declare that I am a professor at the City University of Hong Kong, and I am also a patron of the vet services of the clinic at City University. Now, I've heard the Secretary's explanation, and I am fully on board with the idea that public health is of paramount importance. But with increase in market demand, I have to ask this follow-up question. Under the new arrangement, cats and dogs from the mainland must arrive at the designated land BCPs between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And these 3 designated BCPs are Lok Ma Chau, Shenzhen Bay, as well as Hung Yuen Wai. Now, my question is this. Will the administration consider designating more BCPs for handling the import of cats and dogs? Will the government consider extending the operating hours? This is, in fact, a question from the general public. Secretary, thank you. Thank you, member, for the question. We had rounds of discussions to finalize details with the mainland authorities before coming up with this arrangement. Now, at the initial stage, there was a misunderstanding in a sense that only cats and dogs coming from Shenzhen would enjoy a shorter quarantine period of 30 days, but not other places. And I need to make a clarification here. Cats and dogs from all cities in the mainland would enjoy a shorter quarantine period when coming to Hong Kong. But as I said, they must first obtain a certificate from a recognized laboratory in the mainland. And there are 4, as I mentioned in the reply, before they can be taken to Shenzhen and then across the boundary to Hong Kong. We need designated officers with professional knowledge to handle these matters. So at the first instance, we've decided to put this arrangement into practice in Shenzhen BCPs first, and then with more experience, perhaps we can allow more BCPs to handle the import of cats and dogs. At this stage, we only allow Shenzhen BCPs to handle the import because of resource constraints. Ms. Connie Lam. Pet cats and dogs are sold 1/4 of the price in the mainland than in Hong Kong. So with a new arrangement, it is possible that pet cats and dogs may be imported into Hong Kong for resale in order to reap a big profit. So my question is how the administration will enact legislation to prevent the breeding of animals for the purpose of trading. Secretary, President. Now, for shops selling pets in Hong Kong, be it the physical or online shops, they are subject to our regulation. So, the sale of animals is regulated. As for the mainland, we need to introduce a quarantine arrangement because of the prevention of rabies. And by shortening the quarantine period, we see the merit, because at the moment, we understand that smuggling is quite rampant because of the 120 days of quarantine period, which many people consider to be too long, and people would rather take the risk and smuggle the pets across the boundary. So we believe a shorter quarantine period should help curb smuggling. The other point is that we are very concerned about illegal smuggling of pet cats and dogs, and that is why we have asked the AFCD to work closely with the Customs and Excise Department and the BCPs. Law enforcement action should be taken, and ramp-up efforts should be made to detect the smuggling of animals. Likewise, we also mount online surveillance. If there are advertisements in this regard, we will take enforcement action. So as you can see, we have put in place a system to oversee the sale of pet cats and dogs in Hong Kong. And we also conduct timely reviews. If necessary, we will further tighten this arrangement. Reference Peter Kun. Thank you, President. Now, as I understand, if you take a pet cat or dog with you whilst you travel, when you come back, these cats and dogs will be subject to quarantine as well. Will the administration give an exception for cats, since most cats won't be brought outside of the home territory? So that you can encourage cat owners to bring along their cats when they travel. Thank you, President. Thank you, member, for the concern. We do understand that some pet owners may wish to bring along their pets to travel in the mainland, and when they come back, we need to consider the quarantine arrangements for the prevention of rabies, because in theory, when they are brought to the mainland, it is possible that they may come into contact with some other cats and dogs that may carry the risk of rabies. So this is a real risk. The second point is that we are still discussing with the mainland authorities on further finalizing further details. For example, whether streamlined quarantine arrangements can be put in place for temporary or short-term stay of the pet cats and dogs in the mainland along with their owners, and we will report a progress to the Council in due course. Ms. Judy Chen. Right, President, the Secretary just now mentioned streamlined procedures. I want to know whether the administration has leveraged technology. We have rapid test kits for various virus strains. Now, my question is whether such technology is also available on the mainland or other places for rapid tests to be conducted on cats and dogs. If not, I think our local universities should conduct a study. Secretary, President, over the years we have achieved some progress, especially in relation to import-export of animals and the prevention of rabies. Many countries introduced a quarantine period of 120 days. But in recent years, there have been a significant breakthrough in terms of vaccination against rabies and also the emergence of the RNATT test. So we can now rely on vaccination as well as rapid tests to identify pets with rabies. And because of this reason, the quarantine period can now be substantially shortened because of this technological breakthrough. And I believe in the global community, studies are being conducted on further breakthroughs on rapid tests for rabies. So when there are ways to better control risk, we'll definitely consider shortening the quarantine period further. Mr. Lai Tung-kwok. Thank you, President. As the Secretary just now mentioned, the government attaches great importance to combating smuggling of cats and dogs from the mainland. And the AFCD has been working closely with the Customs and Excise Department. But because of the heavy traffic across the boundary, the existing measure is simply not sufficient. Now, Secretary, have you considered conducting undercover operations or stepping up online patrols, targeting the touting of pet cats and dogs online so as to take targeted action? Secretary. Thank you, President. As I replied just now, we've asked the AFCD to collaborate with the C&E Department of various fronts to combat pet smuggling. The AFCD has in fact set up a dedicated investigation team to look into matters relating to the sale of animal as well as pet breeding advertisements online. The team will also take proactive action to look into suspicious cases, including pet breeding. Now, the C&E Department and the police have all along been very active. They take a risk-based approach and an intelligence-led enforcement strategy to combat smuggling. So there is a joint effort among the AFCD, the Customs and Excise, as well as the police on all fronts. Professor Priscilla LEUNG. Thank you, President. Now, I've been asked to thank the Secretary in particular for the efforts of building a pet-inclusive society in Hong Kong in recent years. There is now a wider acceptance of pets in society, but the plight facing pet owners is the huge medical cost. Now, like I previously declared, I also use the veterinary services provided by the clinic at the City University of Hong Kong. Well, this is something really only the middle class could afford, and they find it very difficult. We also have senior citizens who are pet owners. Now that we have our own university courses, will you consider, from the public interest perspective, assistance to families in poverty to help them keep pets as companions? Well, this involves public money, so I cannot answer this or give you any promise here and now, but we'll definitely look into this option, including the resources.
Question 5, Mr. Lai Tung-kwok. President, it's reported that following the completion of the automated car park on the Hong Kong port island of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge by the end of this year, the authorities plan to implement the southbound travel for Guangdong vehicles in phases, starting as early as the end of this year. The scheme runs with quotas, and Guangdong vehicles allocated with quotas under the first phase will only be allowed to park at the automated car park at the Hong Kong port of the bridge. Passengers may proceed directly to the restricted area of the Hong Kong International Airport and depart Hong Kong by plane without going through immigration clearance, or enter Hong Kong via the Hong Kong port of the bridge and then transfer to other modes of transport to reach the urban areas. Guangdong cars will only be allowed access to the urban areas under the second phase of the southbound travel scheme. In this connection, will the government inform this council? One of the reasons for implementing the southbound travel scheme in 2 phases, whether it will consider implementing the 2 phases in one go by merging them so as to address the calls from various sectors for attracting road trip visitors more expeditiously. 2. Whether it will designate no entry zones for Guangdong vehicles in specific urban areas with heavier traffic, and whether it will increase the daily quota for the southbound travel scheme on weekends, Sundays, and Hong Kong public holidays when urban traffic is relatively light and smooth. And 3. Whether it has assessed the economic benefits brought to Hong Kong upon the full implementation of the southbound travel scheme. Thank you. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, Guangdong and Hong Kong have been committed to implementing various cross-boundary transport measures to jointly develop the Greater Bay Area. and to make good use of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Since the successful implementation of northbound travel for Hong Kong vehicles in July 2023, eligible Hong Kong single-plate private cars are allowed to travel under the customs guarantee-free policy to various commercial centers, countryside tourist hotspots in the Guangdong province via the bridge for business, visiting families or sightseeing on a short-term basis upon making simple bookings, thus allowing greater convenience for Hong Kong travelers to plan their travel. The number of northbound Hong Kong private cars to the Guangdong province has been on the rise, with over 100,000 private cars which have participated in the scheme. The usage of the bridge has also recorded new highs, with its two-way vehicular flow reaching a total of 450,000 vehicles in May this year. That's a daily average of about 15,000 vehicles, representing an increase of about 170% as compared to that before the implementation of the northbound travel scheme, among which vehicles under the northbound travel scheme account for about 40% of the bridge's vehicular flow. That's a daily average of about 6,000 vehicles. Meanwhile, to meet the keen expectation of the public on two-way travel and to provide diversified experiences for mainland travelers to visit Hong Kong, we are actively working with the mainland authorities on the implementation arrangements for the southbound travel for Guangdong vehicle scheme. In response to the three parts of the question raised by Mr. Tung-kwok, my reply is as follows. 1. The experience of implementing the northbound travel scheme provides pragmatic and substantive reference for the planning of the southbound travel scheme between Guangdong and Hong Kong. The governments of Guangdong and Hong Kong have been monitoring the application and travel experience of the citizens to roll out a number of enhanced arrangements, which include increasing the maximum number of applications received per day from 200 to the current 500, increasing the number of vehicle inspection centers from 1 to 3 at present, expanding the travel booking time slots while deferring the deadline of booking and cancellation of booking. Guangdong and Hong Kong have also worked together to enhance port clearance at the bridge so as to address the increasing vehicular flow of the bridge. Meanwhile, various parts of Guangdong are successively providing ancillary facilities to facilitate the vehicles under the northbound travel scheme and launching promotion. As regards the southbound scheme, which is the reverse reciprocal arrangement of the northbound scheme, eligible Guangdong private cars without regular quotas will be allowed to travel to Hong Kong via the bridge for business, visiting families or sightseeing on a short-term basis under the condition that advance bookings have been made. Drawing on the experience from the northbound scheme, we need to ensure that the southbound scheme is taken forward in a prudent manner while enhancing speed and efficiency. We have earlier announced the 2 automated car parks near the Hong Kong port of the bridge as part of the southbound scheme, where private cars from Guangdong and Macau can park when they come to Hong Kong via the bridge. Visitors who park their cars at the Park and Fly car park could transfer flight at the Hong Kong International Airport. This will further facilitate the transport of travelers of the GBA to and from all parts of the world via Hong Kong, as well as consolidate Hong Kong's position as a leading international aviation hub. Visitors who park at the Park and Visit car park could go through immigration clearance at the passenger clearance building of the bridge. This provides visitors to Hong Kong with an additional option. This will promote the flow of people between the two places and drive economic growth. At present, the government and the airport authority are actively undertaking preparatory work for the commencement of operation, including conducting tests and drills as well as formulating the details in respect of the booking and use of the car parks. Our objective is to streamline the procedures to provide maximum convenience for travelers. In addition, we are planning promotional activities and discounts to attract self-drive visitors. This will stimulate the retail, food and beverage, hotel and related service sectors in Hong Kong. 2. Meanwhile, we are working with Guangdong to make early preparation for Guangdong vehicles to enter Hong Kong urban area. We are taking comprehensive consideration of various aspects, including total volume control, port clearance, risk management, and enhancement of supporting facilities. On one hand, we will assess traffic at the port and the capacity of nearby roads, divert traffic away from peak hours, and strengthen port clearance as well as ancillary transport arrangements and contingency plans. On the other hand, we will properly manage the risks, such as requiring southbound vehicles to comply with the rules and regulations of Hong Kong to ensure the safety of their vehicles and take out a Hong Kong third-party insurance.
We're also formulating publicity information covering application procedures, driving rules, and ancillary facilities. Where risks are controllable, we will streamline the application procedures and provide convenience for applicants. Following the above arrangements, the Southbound scheme will be implemented in orderly manner, welcomed by users to the satisfaction of the public and beneficial to the community at large, thereby obviating the need to impose restricted zones or roads for Guangdong cars. 3. We believe that under the conditions of orderly implementation, total volume control, and appropriate supporting measures, the Southbound scheme will provide visitors with convenient and flexible new travel option to Hong Kong for travel, business, exhibitions or conferences, in concerts or other large-scale events, various professional services, leisure and dining, and so on according to their needs. It is expected that various industries in Hong Kong will benefit, and the synergy effect achieved with the northbound scheme will also add extra impetus to the economies of Guangdong and Hong Kong, and the integration and development of the GBA. The Hong Kong SAR government is proactively working with the mainland authorities to formulate the implementation arrangements and timetable for taking forward the Southbound scheme in an orderly manner. I myself have been leading a team to discuss with Guangdong side to strive for early announcement of the details of the scheme within this year. Thank you, President. Mr. Lai Tung-kwok. President, I'm very happy that the Secretary has clearly explained to us about the arrangements for the Southbound travel scheme. That is, the scheme will be implemented in an orderly manner, taking into account the total volume control. According to the major reply, as part of the Southbound scheme, travelers from the GBA may drive to the artificial islands of the bridge, and then they can park their car at the park and fly car park. Are there plans for the administration to, under the Southbound scheme, allow Guangdong cars to transfer to other modes of transportation without having to park their cars at the car park on the artificial island? This will further facilitate GBA travelers to travel through Hong Kong to other parts of the world. Secretary. The supplementary question mentions about how we can make use of the Southbound travel scheme to enhance transit passengers' experience. As mentioned in my major reply, there will be many parking spaces available at the automated car parks so that passengers can park their cars there before they transfer to other modes of transportation. For the airport in Hong Kong, it would be great if we have more transit passengers. However, the principle or our vision for the Southbound travel scheme is that we want to have a reverse reciprocal arrangement of the northbound scheme. Indeed, from the northbound scheme, we see that many people would like to drive to the airport or different parts of the urban areas. This is to diversify their traveling experience. We are working with Guangdong as well as the airport authority to plan for the Southbound scheme. We want to roll out more diversified experiences, and in order to do that, we will listen to people's views and take a holistic approach. On the other hand, we want to see how we can accumulate more experiences so that we can facilitate the integration of Hong Kong into the Greater Bay Area. We also want to make use of this scheme to turn our airport into an international transit hub. Thank you. Mr. Ben Chen. It's important to have two-way travel between Hong Kong and the mainland. However, our capacity cannot be compared with that in Zhuhai. I agree that there should be total volume control, there should be an orderly implementation of the scheme, under the premise that there are sufficient car parking spaces. This is important. I think the first phase sounds acceptable. there will be 1,000 car parking spaces on the artificial island and another 1,800 car parking spaces for transit passengers. However, the second phase is a concern. What will the second phase look like? How can you ensure that there will be enough parking spaces for travelers to park their cars in the second phase so that there won't be illegal parking problems? What are the considerations? How can we promote the implementation of the second phase? Secretary. I thank Mr. Ben Chen. We have to care about whether there are enough car parking spaces. From the northbound scheme, we see that currently there are mainly route recommendation or traveling strategies on the mainland which teach people how to park their cars. There are more land resources on the mainland, so there are more options in terms of car parking on the mainland. We can apply the same experience to this scheme. We cannot stay behind just because there aren't enough land or car parking spaces. When we implement the Southbound scheme and when we look at how we can promote the scheme to the urban areas of Hong Kong, we should take forward the scheme in an orderly manner. There needs to be a volume control measure to ensure that there is convenience for travelers. We have to take into consideration the public acceptability, and at the same time, we want to provide a more convenient experience for travelers. So when this policy or scheme is rolled out, we have to leverage our forces in the community. We want to benefit the retail and catering trade, and the government will have to tell people where they can park their cars so to encourage people to spend money. When we formulate our policies and measures, we want to integrate the different forces of our community to provide convenience to travelers. Car parking is, of course, a top consideration. We will adopt a risk-based approach in order to make sure that there is convenience for travelers. At the same time, we want to control the adverse impacts on our community. Mr. Frankie Yik, thank you. According to media reports, there have been double-plate cars that are engaged in illegal carriage for hire or reward. So there have been reports recently about these cases. I, as a representative of the relevant industry, I support the Southbound scheme. However, members of the trade are worried that the problem I mentioned would aggravate. They say that their vehicles and drivers should be linked in the sense that those drivers who are qualified to drive can be allocated quota under the scheme to ensure that there won't be abuse of the scheme. The Immigration Department should be empowered to check whether there is a linkage between the motorist or driver and the car. Secretary, I thank Mr. Yik for proposing these options. For both the northbound scheme as well as the southbound scheme, we have been working with the Security Department as well as the Department of Transport of Guangdong Province. We want to take into consideration all the factors you mentioned. On one hand, we want to offer convenience to Guangdong cars. For example, we have the automated car parks for them. We also want to think about how we can implement advanced vetting or approval before future Guangdong cars get to the urban areas of Hong Kong. At the same time, we don't want to impose too many restrictions on Guangdong drivers so that it won't become a restrictive scheme. At the same time, we have to take into consideration the acceptability of the public. So our communication with the trade will be crucial. I will look into the matter in a serious manner to see how we can facilitate our communication with the community in the future. Mr. Ambrose Lam, the Southbound scheme has been delayed for years, and the reason from the government is that there aren't enough car parking spaces. So I have a question related to this. According to the Hong Kong Standards Guidelines and Standards, that's Chapter 8, Section 711, the level of car parking spaces should encourage travelers to take public transport such as railways. My understanding is that be it Central Tsim Sha Tsui, Tung Chung or Tuen Mun, there shouldn't be car parking spaces near MTR stations. So travelers from the mainland, if they want to park their cars in Tung Chung, Tuen Mun, they cannot transfer to MTR to go to Central or Tsim Sha Tsui. Will the government amend the relevant provisions under the Hong Kong Planning Standards and Guidelines? Secretary. The standards and guidelines that you mentioned are for all drivers in Hong Kong. We will take into consideration the number of private cars in Hong Kong and the land resources available as we formulate our standard and make relevant adjustments. Now we're talking about the Southbound scheme. We want Guangdong vehicles to reach the urban areas of Hong Kong. I think by increasing the number of car parking spaces may not be the most effective way to attract Guangdong cars. Instead, I think there should be a direction. I think we should take forward the scheme in an orderly manner. In Guangdong, there is much more land and there are a lot more car parking spaces. People want traveling strategies or recommendations. We want to direct cars to certain attraction sites so that they can spend money there. Then we can plan our car parking facilities. If we plan it that way, it would be a much more targeted approach. In terms of the planning standards and guidelines, we will review them in a holistic manner. We will take into consideration the needs of local people so that we can meet their demands, and at the same time, we will not affect the supply of car parking spaces. Mr. Peter Hsu, many people travel to the north by car nowadays, and so the southbound scheme will be needed. And it will also stimulate our retail and catering industries. I think the southbound scheme should be implemented soon. I, as a member of the CCPCC, I think we should speed up the implementation of the southbound scheme. At the initial phase, can we first focus on Lantau? Can we have Guangdong vehicles travel on the roads in Lantau? We should also allow them to go to Disneyland or the Buddha. We have 11 skies at the Hong Kong airport, and it can attract travelers. Will you consider this, Secretary? Secretary, I think our goal is to have Guangdong travelers come to the urban areas of Hong Kong by car. This will stimulate spending in Hong Kong and boost economic growth. Just now, the member mentioned that we can open up Lantau and the relevant attraction sites to Guangdong travelers. We want to take forward the scheme in an orderly manner, and at the same time, we want to have volume control. We want to make sure that there are enough car parking spaces. So, in this sense, we may not restrict travelers to Lantau. We can also open up urban areas and other attraction sites to Guangdong travelers. However, we have to make sure that there is safety and traffic control. We want volume control as we take forward the scheme in an orderly manner. Thank you.
Last question seeking an oral reply, Mr. NGAN Man-yu, Dr. NGAN Man-yu. President, regarding the supply of car parking spaces, will the government inform this council one of the following information on parking spaces for different vehicle classes, private cars, commercial vehicles, and motorcycles in Hong Kong from 2022 to 2024, the number of parking spaces, district distribution, utilization rate, the change in the number of parking spaces due to redevelopment, new development, and other projects with a tabulated breakdown by types of parking space, for example, public or temporary car parks, on-street parking spaces, whether it has projected the parking spaces demand from this year to 2029, and of the planned number of parking spaces for different vehicle classes to be built, their locations, the government departments responsible, and their expected completion dates too, whether it has plans to conduct a comprehensive review of the supply of spaces for different vehicle classes in the territory and study the further opening of car parks in schools and government premises in the evenings and on public holidays for public use, if so, of the details, if not, reasons for that. And 3, whether without affecting traffic flow and road safety, it will consider increasing the number of free on-street parking spaces, extending the parking hours for nighttime parking spaces, and install multi-story stacking parking systems to improve land use efficiency, if so, the details, if not, reason for that. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, in my reply to question 1, I have already stated the policy and principle of the government on parking spaces. I'm not going to repeat it. To increase the number of parking spaces, we have adopted a multi-pronged approach which includes the use of technology, enhanced cooperation with different parties, and priority accorded to commercial vehicles. Having consulted the Transport Department TD, my reply to Dr. Ngan's question is as follows. 1. In the past 3 years, the number of parking spaces in Hong Kong has increased by over 15,000. The number of spaces stands at over 800,000. The ratio between the number of parking spaces and that of registered vehicles is rising. The number of on-street metered parking spaces is also on the increase. However, due to the recovery of car park sites with a short-term tenancy STD, the number of parking spaces for commercial vehicles CVs has dropped slightly. We make use of various measures to increase the number of spaces for CVs. These include the 460 spaces for commercial vehicles in public car parks in operation or under construction, and the requirement to provide a minimum amount of spaces for commercial vehicles in suitable STT car parks. We have been working actively with various sectors to increase supply. From 2022 to 2024, over 25,000 spaces are added through urban redevelopment. The utilization rates of different parking spaces remains high. That of metered spaces stands at 90% and on the rise. In the 11 public car parks under the TD, the utilization rate is between 80 and 90%, whereas in STT car parks, the rate is around 60%. When taking forward car park projects, the TD will work out the projected demand on a district basis. Information on illegal parking in the district and nearby facilities are taken into account. For example, in districts with more logistics activities, priority will be given to commercial vehicle parking spaces. The TD will actively consider undertaking a study to project the demand in the medium and long term. Public car parks in operation and under construction provide a total of 3,200 spaces. We are considering turning the shaft left by the Central Kowloon Route project into an underground multi-story car park with an automated parking system. In the coming 2 years, there will be an additional 12,000 spaces provided. At least 500 of them are for commercial vehicles. The number does not include those in future STT car parks and in private developments, so the actual number will be higher. Our priority is on increasing the supply of spaces for CVs, particularly in areas with an acute shortage, and enhancing the promotion of automated parking systems. Through our policy initiatives and concerted efforts with districts, we are confident that the supply of parking spaces will increase. The projected supply beyond 2025 is set out in Annex 5. 2. From time to time, the government review and adjust, if necessary, the parking facility standards in the Hong Kong PSG to meet future demands. The first batch of subsidized housing under the 2021 revision will be completed in 2026. The 26 projects will provide about 4,700 spaces, including 220 spaces for commercial vehicles. Among them, the 33 spaces for medium-heavy vehicles and 18 for coach bus pickup drop-off bays will allow nighttime parking. The TD will monitor the effectiveness of the revised standard and will review it to keep it abreast of the latest development. The Government Property Agency, GPA, opens the 1,000 spaces in the 12 joint user office buildings for the use of the public. Some are open throughout the day. The public car parks under the LCSD offer more than 2,700 spaces. The TD is working with the Housing Department, HD, to allow nighttime parking for commercial vehicles at pick-up drop-off bays in 5 public housing estates in Sha Tin and Tsuen Wan, where there are demands for medium or heavy goods vehicle parking. The TD and the Education Bureau are encouraging schools to open their car parks for the use of school buses outside school hours. We hope that this will be a targeted measure to meet demand. 3. The TD has been identifying suitable locations across districts to add on-street parking spaces. As of 2024, more than 1,860 on-street nighttime parking spaces have been designated. The free parking period for over 600 of these spaces, nighttime parking spaces for commercial vehicles, has been adjusted to start at 7 p.m. Future provisions of such spaces will aim to advance the free period as much as possible. The government has been implementing automated parking system in suitable public and STT car parks. As APS, automated parking system can nearly double the capacity at the same space. Public car parks under construction will provide about 1,000 automated parking spaces. 7 private car parks and 3 STT car parks are equipped with APS. The public car parks under construction are in Cheung Kwan O, San Po Kong, Sham Shui Po, and Ma On Shan, while the STT car parks are in Chin Wan, Tai Po, Sham Shui Po, and Yau Ma Tei. Various APS models are being adopted, including parcel stacking, vertical lifting, and horizontal sliding, as well as circular shaft lifting systems. We recognize that the widespread adoption of APS requires private sector involvement. Both the EMSD and the TD have published guidelines for industry reference. In addition, the TD will actively encourage developers to adopt APS and explore further initiatives to promote its integration. Dr. Ngan Man-yu. Thank you. In Hong Kong, there are lots of vacant parking spaces in car parks. So there is a mismatch of supply and demand. In Choi Wan Estate Phase 2, there are about dozens of cars on the waiting list. Across the road in Phase 1, there are several stories of parking spaces being vacant because of restrictions of land lease. When there is a vacant space, non-residents or non-tenants are not allowed to use it. So will there be incentives put in place for private projects to make better use of parking spaces in public housing estates? Not just at the housing department. When it comes to relevant departments such as the lands department as well as the transport department, we're all working together to find resources to increase the number of parking spaces where possible. I will forward the scenarios you have outlined to the TD Housing Department and the Lands Department to look further into it. I think it involves arrangements under the land lease. I can tell Dr. Ngan that we will make the best use of land resources to meet demand. We will look at different ways to meet demand from within and outside the districts. As we've said in the past, if we can turn drop-off pickup bays into nighttime parking space, we will definitely look at its feasibility. Mr. Vincent Chang, I thank the Secretary for setting out in the main reply that in relation to the shaft used by the Central Kowloon route, it may be turned into an underground car park, but is a rather distance. Well, according to the administration, about 870,000 penalty tickets are in West Kowloon, and there are altogether about 2.5 million such tickets being issued. I see that there are about 20,000 parking spaces in Yaochim district, near Yamate Police Station, near Kansu Street. There are sites for parking use. Have you assessed the distribution of metered parking of different periods to encourage turnover? The Transport Department in the main office overlooks the overall policy. In district offices, the staff members try to identify suitable locations for parking spaces. They will have to first liaise with the police to ensure road safety. Secondly, they have to liaise with residents in the area to sound them out. There are some locations mentioned by Mr. Chang. We will look into them. In our exchange with the district, we would make use of our district network to collect their feedback. We want to expedite the process. We want to meet district demand, but at the same time, we want to ensure that the district residents find our measures acceptable. West Kowloon is an area where there is a high density of population as well as commercial activities. We will explore different measures and follow up on the matters raised. Dr. Janice Ho. In the main reply, the Secretary talked about automated parking spaces. Some members mentioned that there are areas with a high density of population and level of commercial activities. There is not enough space. We can use technology. The design of some automated parking systems can cater for the space constraints. Vehicles are stacked up in a narrow space. I hear that the government is identifying locations. Perhaps you can do it in a more extensive way. Consult residents in, say, Yaochim Wong to see where you can find suitable locations. A few years ago, we identified standalone public housing blocks or mini public housing estates. Perhaps you will talk to the district council to find out where there are, say, narrow strips of land or space to turn them into car parks. Secretary, I thank Dr. Ho for his comments and suggestions. We're not talking about high level of technology. We have puzzle stacking systems. We have also horizontal sliding systems. In a number of projects, these systems have been used. Say, for example, in the Cheongkwon complex of the Immigration Department, the space is limited, but the number of parking spaces has been increased by one-fold because of these automated systems. However, we need to take into account ingress and egress of vehicles. In addition, we need to consider the actual traffic situation and use in the district. We appreciate the collective wisdom in the district. They will give us valuable input in many different ways so that we can maximize the use of limited space. Mr. Chen Ho-fung, over 3 years there has been an additional 15,000 parking spaces, but most of them are in remote areas, so the effectiveness is limited for the urban areas. A lot of the parking spaces in residential areas are rented on a monthly basis, so hourly parking in the urban area is seriously short. So have you considered identifying monthly parking spaces for hourly parking? Near the electrical complex, there is a large site. It can be turned into an STT car park. Why didn't you do it? I thank Mr. Chen for his question. You have cited a location as an example. Yes, in the central and western district, it's particularly difficult to identify sites, more so than other districts. A number of STT car parks have been recovered. They've been recovered for development. Near the electrical complex, there is a keyhole site near the old Hong Kong Post headquarters. It's been left vacant for a number of years. But we make use of vacant sites waiting for further development and turn them into car parks. We will work with our district offices to explore possibilities. We've tried using the space under flyovers. The number of spaces provided is limited, but they are good for accommodating smaller vehicles or motorcycles. We have to be innovative, but at the same time we have to take into account the views of residents to make our projects acceptable. We do not want to add inconvenience to local residents. That's the major principle. Mr. Leung Meng-kwong, we have limited land supply. Using APS is the best way to maximize the use of space. Well, it involves cost of infrastructure, operation, and the machines and equipment. There is a huge upfront cost. So that's why in STTs, puzzle stacking systems or vertical and horizontal lifting and sliding system is used because it makes the most use of space. Would you consider offering a discount on rent and other measures to attract operators to use better technology to increase capacity? That is particularly the case in areas with an acute shortage. Technology can be used to provide more parking spaces. In relation to horizontal sliding systems and puzzle stacking systems, they involved a shorter construction period and a lower operating cost. However, a tower lifting system, in considering its use, we need to consider the number of vehicles, the time it takes to park vehicles. There are a number of factors affecting the turnover rate. There will be about 1,800 parking spaces using automated parking system. The automated guided vehicle system will be used. This increases the capacity greatly. And that is the site in the airport. This mode is not commonly adopted, but in that site, this will be used as a pilot and as an exemplary. We've been talking to the airport authority. We have removed barriers and streamlined process. We want this to be a model to encourage developers to adopt its use. It may be difficult for it to be put to use in STTs, but in commercial development, this is a rather good option. Dr. Low Wai Kwok. The ratio of commercial vehicles and spaces for commercial vehicles is about 0.6. That means 3 commercial vehicles will have to compete for 2 parking spaces. After office hours, we're talking about a third of commercial vehicles will have to be parked illegally. How do you expect commercial vehicle drivers to lead their lives? It says in Annex 2 that from 2022 to 2024, we see the number of commercial vehicle spaces has decreased. Well, it's been mentioned that there are a number of measures to increase the number of spaces, say, for example, to designate on-street parking spaces for the use of commercial vehicles. By how much? At least 100. Yes, the direction is good, but can it be done with bigger magnitude? I share Dr. Low's sentiment. Commercial vehicles contribute greatly to our economic development. We do recognize that there is a need for parking spaces. In the coming few years, we'll use a multi-pronged approach to increase flexibility. We make use of loading and unloading bays for nighttime parking. All in all, supply and demand for commercial vehicles will have to be well coordinated in its projection. Thank you.
Government bills. This council resumes the second reading debate on the Buildings Energy Efficiency Amendment Bill 2025.